We'll see if we did this correct or not. Let me see.
How you gonna hit go live and then put on your chapstick?
Because I forgot to do it before I hit the go live. I mean, I can only do so much. Oh yeah, I see us. Oh man, I can't be sniffling throughout this whole thing. We'll let some people jump on.
Yep, come on in, family.
Let us know where you're watching from. Let's see.
Yep, I got it up on Facebook.
Hi, Elaine. Oh, you have it up on Facebook?
Yeah.
Hey, Amber. Amber from Portland. Krista not here today, y'all, so we just gonna live kind of like off the chain. Don't play no games. I have to run off soon, but I'm here. Say the good stuff first for me. Well, okay. Let's jump in. We gonna start off with talking about the Alabama race riots. Now, it's not truly the Alabama race riots, but that's what I'm calling it in my heart. It was earlier. Gosh, well, I don't even know what day it is. I'm sick. Krista's sick. I'm not sure really what day it is, but it had to be last week where the riverboat in was it Huntsville? You from Alabama? Tell me where it
Montgomery.
was. Riverboat
Montgomery.
in Montgomery. Yes, had a dispute where a black, I don't know if he's the security officer, but he was telling people like you need to separate your boats and all that. And he got jumped by two white guys. And that started the race riots of Alabama. Everybody seemed to jump in. So these two white guys started to beat on this black guy. And it seemed pretty innocent. Like he seemed like he was just doing his job. He didn't seem twisted or nothing like that. And these two white guys come down and they like start hitting them and kicking them. And then before you know it, black people start jumping in. And then before you know, we got people swimming in the waters. White people coming from everywhere, black people coming from everywhere. And then out of nowhere comes a folding chair. And this folding chair is used by a black man to beat white people with. And at one point, it's caught on video where he's beating this white woman over the head with this folding chair. It was the epitome of a mess. What are your thoughts on it, Kevin, before we go too far?
It was a hot mess. So I read an article on it from the captain of the ship. So the black guy who got jumped, he was the first mate from the ship, from the ferry. So the ferry came back and the boat was parked where the ferry needed to dock. And so they were telling the people they need to move their boat so that the ferry could dock. And these people were drunk and they were just acting a fool. They wouldn't do it. And so what ended up happening is the first mate from the ship ended up getting off the ship and going over to move the boat himself. And that is what the people got upset about. And these people were like, imagine a ferry is telling you got to park. They're blowing the horn. The captain is saying, you got to move so we can, and you basically throw up the middle fingers and walk off. Like you don't care. Because the people are stranded on the ferry. They can't get off. And so, that's what happened. So they jumped the guy because they were mad because he moved the boat. And of course, he's fussing at them. And then just chaos just broke out. And it ended up being a black versus white Royal Rumble. I'm not going to say WWE because I'm old. It's WWF. It was old school Royal Rumble in Montgomery, Alabama. And so that's kind of what happened. So even the guy who jumped in the water, so for people who haven't seen the video, a black guy, you see him jump in the water, he starts swimming over to the fight to help. And there's been a lot of names he's been given, nicknames. Aquaman, uh, Michael B. Jordan, no,
Michael B.
no,
Phelps.
Michael B. Phelps, yeah. But Jermichael Phelps was my favorite name they gave him. But
They
that guy, yeah,
Go ahead.
he worked on the ferry. He was one of the employees. So the guy he's going to help is one of his coworkers, right? And that's what ended up happening. It ended up being a lot of coworkers going to this man's aid from the ferry. But the way it unfolded, it ended up being black on white, and right. And so we get this whole race riot narrative from this fight over a boat that wouldn't move so the ferry could dock, and that's when the culture took over.
I mean, people said that we at one time had the Boston Tea Party. Now we have the Alabama Sweet Tea Party. Y'all, it's not funny, but okay, before we started, I was trying to tell Kevin, I hope I can keep a straight face, and apparently I can't, because it's what has been done with it. Like, okay, so two things. One, I think the black white narrative was just blown up in culture, and everyone is now, just continuing with this automatic narrative that we've seen for the last 3 years of black on white or white on black. And we're each on our teams, and now we have to defend our own and things like that. And that's sad. But what we have done with these memes, y'all, I'm going to share a few, and then we can talk about the seriousness about, because there is some seriousness and some thoughts that we do have that are more sober minded. But before we get there, let me know if you can see this. Let me see, because we don't have Krista today, so hopefully I can share this properly. Do you see this, Kevin?
I do not.
You don't. Darn it. I don't know if anybody else can see it. Put it
I
in the
don't see it
chat
on
if y'all
Facebook.
can. Y'all see it on Facebook? Okay.
Nah.
Darn it. That makes me sad. Well, one of the memes is, I don't know if this is Sojourner Truth or Harriet Tubman, but she's handing a folding chair down through the generations. There is a meme where the first mate, the Black Gilligan, he throws his hat up, and and it's so bad.
You just call him the Black Gilligan?
It was a 3-hour tour, and there wasn't nobody expecting this. And he throws his hat up, and it's like the bat signal, and all of Wakanda comes out. Oh my gosh, there are so many folding chair memes. The folding chair truly is the hero of the story. There are people who found the folding chair and then went and took pictures with the folding chair. Lisa says that's what makes it so difficult. The meme game was strong. It's so hard not to laugh. But Lisa, on your page, I saw that somebody wrote a comment and they were like, if this was a Black woman being beat down by a white man with a folding chair, would we be laughing? And I was like, ugh, bringing it back to the serious. But it's so real. Like, how would culture respond? How would, just everyday people respond? Would these memes be allowed if the shoe was on the other foot? And no, nobody would allow that. But Kevin, I thought you had some good points about just how far things have gone and what we took it to.
Yeah. Yeah, Lisa's right. It was hard. The meme game was strong. It was strong. But at the same time, you had the guy with the folding chair went too far, right? Because at first he's fighting this other man. They're got an altercation. He's using the chair. Okay, whatever. But then there's a white woman who's already on the ground. She's sitting on the ground, and he comes over with two hands overhead and just hits her over the head with the chair. And it was like, oh, that's too far. He went too far. But nobody seems to pick up on that. And as you said, if it was the other way around, if this was a white man, regardless of how the fight started and who deserved what, right? if there was a white man and he hit a black woman sitting on the ground over the head like that with a chair, people would be livid.
It would be on
They
site.
would be.
On
Yes.
site. Everybody.
Yes.
On site.
Yes.
And we don't go ahead. Sorry.
No. I just want to say, because we didn't say this, that the people who refused to remove their boat got exactly what they deserved because they had no business jumping that guy, right? So I don't think anybody was disagreeing over the butt whipping they got that they deserved. It is where the culture took it, and it was the comments that were being said, and even like you said, the Harriet Tubman, memes and all the comments about the ancestors and would have been proud. And
that we were doing it for the ancestors, and that finally we had our day in, like antiquity. Like we have now arisen and come to this moment of being able to defend ourselves. I also saw another serious comment where a poster was like, we didn't ask the color of, or we didn't ask like what your religion was, we didn't ask what your sex was, we didn't ask who you were sleeping with. All we saw was that one of us was in trouble and we all just gathered around. And that was the thought of like, there's much respect behind that. And I don't know if I agree with that. Like, yes, I can say, if you see somebody in trouble, regardless of skin color, what's your response? But we can't use this, we get to beat up on white people because of slavery to congratulate ourselves or kind of like tap ourselves on the back and be like, look what we did. This is how we should always, act and come together.
Yeah. So I think it's important to point out too, the first black guy that showed up to help, he did not show up to fight. He was trying to break it up. And he actually did. He actually got them off of him. Mm-hmm. But once the guy who got jumped got up and then the guy swam across and they had a gang of them, they were like, okay, let's go get him. So it wasn't like they was coming to his rescue because he was already rescued. They were pissed at that point and they were just going to fight. Right. And I want to say this because I saw a comment. Someone said, I can't remember who it was, but they said, based on this reaction, and I agree with this, it is very clear that black people do not want reconciliation with white people. They want revenge. And that's the feeling I was getting. Mm-hmm. People was feeling like this was revenge. It was finally, we got them. This is for payback. This is for the ancestors, right?
And this kind of leads into Lisa's comment. And let's see. She says, what I get from all the stuff I've seen online, I think there was a sense of justice considering where it was and that this was something that could not be done for decades upon decades. And I hear you, but okay, so two separate thoughts. One, do we then get to take revenge? But we have to ask that question in light of believers versus non-believers. Now, I'm sure that probably 2/3 of the people on that riverboat cruise would get up and go to church the next morning. But like,
absolutely,
in regards to the historic Christian worldview, how do we look at things like justice and revenge and the true biblical definition of those things? Because I said this in 2020, is that much of what I see and saw in 2020 in regards to Floyd and Breonna Taylor and Ahmaud and all of that was that there was this sense of, this is how y'all treated us then, and we're going to be able to treat you this way now. It felt very much like a revenge. So I don't think you're wrong in that, but we have to ask the question of, is that right? I think you might have froze, Kevin. And so in
Yeah, I'm
looking
back.
at,
You
okay,
got me? Yeah.
yeah, I got you. But I'm just asking the question of how do we consider this idea of like what Lisa's saying, it looks like finally justice was due. But are we trying to get justice for something that was, years ago still? I don't know. I'm
I, I
trying
don't
to.
I don't think it's about justice, but I do think that something was revealed that the crowd that's happy about all of this won't acknowledge. The fact that it is now capable for it to be the other way around, right? Because they will still claim that somehow Black people are still living under some oppression, and that if something happens to a Black person, it's because they were powerless to the white system. Well, where was the white system in this case? Because the white people got arrested, they got charged, they're in court. The Black people are cheered on. And this is Montgomery, Alabama. Just so we're taking note of history and
Mhm.
where things go, and the kind of the stereotypes you have about the Deep South and a place like Montgomery, Alabama. There was no local white lynch mob of Klansmen to go in and lynch the Black people for this, right? There's no system that's coming down and raining revenge on the Black people for this injustice against this white good stand up white Christian family. Like, there's none of that. That whole narrative, that whole thing does not even exist anymore, right? But the people who are happy about this thing happening won't even acknowledge that. They won't even acknowledge it, because the next time there's something in the news, they'll go right back to their oppression narrative, right? They'll go right back to we're in Jim Crow still. They'll go
Mhm.
right back to singing Negro spirituals, like they picking cotton, you know. Um, and so that's my takeaway is, like, we don't live in that old America anymore.
Mhm.
This group of white people were dead wrong. They got exactly what they deserved, and everybody went home.
Yeah.
And that is a telling point of where we are today in 2023 America, in Montgomery, Alabama. You know, to where justice was done. It really was, in terms of a law enforcement, because the Black guy with the folding chair did get arrested.
Well,
Um,
I
yeah,
mean,
yeah.
come
I
on now.
mean, once he hit that woman, the police jumped in real soon and put him in handcuffs.
As well, they
Um,
should.
they should have. They should have.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
mean, but I'm saying that's just how justice was done all the way around, right? But in terms of a historical narrative, or historical perspective, this idea that this was somehow justice for slavery and Jim Crow and all this stuff, like, that is, I mean, honestly, that is what the whole anti-racism movement is about. That is what the
Mm,
whole BLM movement is about. It is
say
about
more.
turning the tables, right? Yeah. It
Say
is
more.
about, you know, yeah, it is about, you know, past discrimination needing current present discrimination, right? To call it justice. Um, it is all about Black people. It's not even about where Black people are today. It's more so about wanting white people to suffer in some type of way,
Yes.
right? So it's not even about what we can do, what we can achieve, where we are in our lives, and it is until they see white people suffer in some type of way, they're not happy. Um, Another thing that's revealed to me, along with another incident this week, this third grade teacher got fired for these racist comments she made online. She made a video about how she was upset because her sister was dating this white guy, right? And
Was she Black?
she's Black. Yeah, yeah,
Oh,
she's
I
Black.
didn't. I didn't hear this. Uh-huh.
Yeah. And so I was having some conversations with some people about it in a private message. And what was revealed to me, along with the Montgomery thing, a lot of people do not operate on the standpoint of principles, right and wrong. Like, we would say racism is wrong, therefore I'm against racism. What or violence is wrong, I'm against violence. You know, looting is wrong, I'm against looting. What is being revealed is that we really aren't against racism or violence or looting.
Oh
We're
yeah.
only against it. We're only against it when we feel like it's against Black people. And that is what's killing me. And that is why you and I get in trouble, because we're operating on principle, right?
Yes.
And
Mhm.
so we will call out it either way, right? They will only call it out, or they only care about it if it's affecting a Black person. Because one of the responses to the girl and her rant about her sister was, how did the person say it? Let her go off. Basically, just let her go off. I'm like, if there was a white person being upset because their sister was dating a Black dude, you wouldn't be saying let them go off.
I think what you're hitting on is, for Christians, like true Christians, is the
Yes.
principle of partiality.
Yes.
We aren't to treat the great better than, the rich better than the poor, or the great better than the lowly, or, like, we don't participate in that type of partiality. And I think what we're seeing is just this continued idea of race partiality, that in our culture, if you bear a certain skin color or you identify as a certain race, well, there's a group of things and principles by which you can participate with. You can say things, you can do things, but if you have less melanin or you don't identify as this specific race, then you can't do that. And you dare not question it. And so you're right. Like, there are, getting in trouble and questions and getting kicked out the tribe when you don't participate according to the bucket that you're supposed to be put in according to your social identity category. But we are okay. Like, we are okay with racism. We are okay with partiality. We're okay with saying, this person isn't invited to the barbecue because they have that color skin, and they can only come to the barbecue and be invited to the group meeting when, if they have this color skin, they agree with all of my principles and narratives.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yeah.
partiality.
Or,
That,
or even thinking about this, think about the idea of they have to be invited to the cookout. Because what if we have to invite them to our cookout, but we don't want them to have to invite us to theirs. We just get to sit at theirs. We get to go if we want. Right?
look, I like to eat. I'm going to everybody cookout. I don't care. I don't care. Look, you making tacos, you making ham hocks. I don't care. Whatever you making, I want to come.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, it is. It's the idea of partiality. And for people, and I was talking to some of these people I was talking to were they are professing Christians. And one person even said the whole idea that we can't be racist towards whites because of all the things they've done to us,
That's
right?
prejudice
For
plus power.
400 years.
That's the prejudice
Yeah,
plus power
exactly.
narrative.
Yeah, yeah. And I was like, no, either something is right or it's wrong, right? And it was almost as if this woman's rant and what happened in Montgomery is simply our right because of past injustice. You
Yes.
have a right to be racist. You have a right to be prejudiced against white people. You have a right to go and take your frustration down and beat up white people. Like 2020 all over again, right? This is a right. It's frustration built up for 400 years type narrative. And at some point, we have to say, no, that's just wrong. It's wrong. It's wrong when someone else does it. It's wrong when we do it. It's something that is wrong, period. But that is not the worldview that a lot of people are operating from. They're operating from the worldview of tribalism. And that's why I agree with that's why I agree with that quote, that it's very obvious that a lot of Black people don't want reconciliation with white people. They simply want revenge. And it was the gleefulness of this past week over this beatdown has really revealed that. And I was even surprised by some of the people I saw being so gleeful about it, and even buying into that this is for the ancestors type narrative. I was shocked at some of the people I saw doing that. You know, uh,
I I I just, yeah, like it's one of those things for me where it's very sad. And yet I found myself, and I'm just gonna like openly confess, I found myself like laughing at how far like the meme game was so strong. And then questioning my own, like, not yeah, just questioning maybe my own rightness of heart. Like, this is clearly wrong. And yet, even I, like, here I am, like, laughing at some of these things where I'm like, my gosh, like, I know that this is so wrong. I don't know. I completely agree with you. I don't think that it's right at all. And I do think that you're right in the idea that there are many, I'm not going to say all, that there are many Black people who don't actually want reconciliation, but do want revenge. Or they want, in order to get to reconciliation, there is this whole litany of things that have to be done before we can get there. And unfortunately, that's true of many of us in the church. Like, how do we in the church understand that this idea of racial reconciliation is really made up? That unity is our starting place. And if unity is our starting place, then we, according to Ephesians 4, we walk from the place of unity forward with our brothers and sisters. And it's not this list of, like, before we can actually get to reconciliation, you have to, lament from your whiteness and repent of your whiteness and repent of your ancestors, dealings and all of that other stuff.
that's what happens when you have a lens or worldview that views everything through a lens of power,
Mm,
right?
mm-hmm.
That's really what this is. And until they see, white people give up, quote unquote, their power, and I'm pretty sure there are white people in the chat that are going like, please show me my power. I wish I had it. Like, but until they see some type of transfer of power, they don't believe that we can be reconciled, because what they have an issue with, I'm trying to see how to put it. When they view society, the current society we live in, and the fact that Eurocentric standards are kind of the norm standard that society goes by, whether it's beauty standards, whether it's cultural standards, what are we talking about? That is what they hate. And they take their hate of that and confuse it with some type of justice, right? Or some type of oppression. And I have a buddy I tell all the time, Jesus did not come to free you from white culture that you don't like, right? The fact that you gotta, whatever is, you can't, sag your pants, or you gotta cut your, like, these things that are really superficial. That's not oppression, right? That is not, that is you, that is simply the result of the majority culture, right?
Yes, and I hesitate to stop at like these Eurocentric values, because truly, like, if we were to look at most of what's being put forward as like the white values right now, they're
Mm-hmm.
all really Judeo-Christian values. I would
Yes, I
I
was
would
gonna
say
get there.
like
Yes.
99% of them. You know what I
Yes.
mean? It
Uh-huh. Yeah.
These
And
are com-
that's why
go
in
ahead.
that, we talk about that pamphlet that the Smithsonian put out,
Mhm.
the
The
African
National
American.
African American History.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, and it talked about what was whiteness, and on that list of whiteness was Christianity,
Mm.
right? What was on that list was the Protestant work ethic, right? So yeah, Christianity is deemed whiteness, and yes, they view all of those things. They just label it all whiteness, but yes, it is largely Judeo-Christian values. Um, and so that is what they are. A lot of Black people really just want an Afrocentric state, right? They want their own government culture that represents some type of Afrocentricness. Um,
I think that's what they want. I'm not sure because this whole idea, like if we can be honest, like this idea of Afrocentrism, that's some American made up stuff.
100%.
Because like when you walk like Botswana, Namibia, Malawi, Zambia, South Africa, like just know it's not that. You know what I mean? So at that point, I
Yeah,
also feel like there's this thought of like, well, I want to do like my Afrocentric stuff and then I want to sell it and I want to make sure that I can make money off. It's really capitalistic.
yeah, it is. Um, Man, yeah, it really is. And I should say it's the idea of Afrocentric, or it's the idea of what we believe it is. No, we say for the culture. When we talk about the culture, they want to live in a society where the culture is the predominant culture. Where I put it like this, well, there's no need to code switch, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
until that day comes, they will be bitter. They will be angry. They will feel like we're still living under whatever oppression. I'm just saying, like, it don't matter how much things
But
change in regards to relations, laws, none of that will ever change as long as they feel that the country they live in is Eurocentric. It'll never change.
but everybody code switch. Like this is my thing. Like if you are a white person in the South and you are going and you have like a hard Southern drawl as a white person in the South,
Hmm.
and you go up to Idaho to go work for the state capitol, are you still going to use your strong Southern drawl? Or are you going to adapt or adopt the language, vernacular,
Yeah,
tone of the place
it's what
that
we
you
call
eat? Like, I don't know about that.
yeah, it's what we call the telephone voice. Everyone has one. Everybody has one. That voice you answer the phone with that's not your regular voice.
Don't play no games, honey. I don't answer my phone. And if I do, I'll automatically start out with what you doing. Don't play. I was like, what you doing?
Well,
Okay.
let's say you were at work, you're a receptionist, you were answering the phone.
Oh yeah.
You know,
Center for
everybody has
Biblical
that
Unity.
voice. Yeah,
Yes. Yeah. Okay, we can't stay on this no much longer. We need to go
yeah.
on to the
Okay,
next
let's
thing.
move.
But
Let's move.
I do need to hit on Amber's comment because apparently somebody came to her with some foolishness. It says, she says, I had someone in a reconciliation group tell me that I owed it to a person of color to give them my house for free because it was stolen because of my white power and privilege.
Oh my goodness.
I can't say nothing because all
And
I want to say is just going to reveal my sin. So go ahead.
no, I was like, because this has been the rebuttal I've seen be very successful. Just tell if they're black, tell them to give their house to a Native American,
Ooh.
right? The land, their house that they bought and paid for and living in is just as stolen if that's the case, right? Um, it's really and of course they'll never do that because it's simply something weaponized to attack white people with. That's all
Yeah.
it is,
Mhm.
you know. And we have such a perverted view of what is justice. It is simply our anger, our bitterness, um, and people think that it's righteous. They think it's righteous anger, you know. And it's really like, no, you just have a hardened heart. You won't forgive. You're angry. You're bitter. You're envy. That's a sin that we don't talk enough about. Being envious of what others have, right? Um, and yeah, and that's what drives a lot of this. And so, yeah, I'm not surprised that she got experienced that type of foolishness. I've seen that type of foolishness, and it's what's taught. It's what's taught in universities. It's what's taught in all of these woke circles. You know, um, but yeah,
Tammy. Tammy said, "This girl is part Choctaw. Give me that
Give me
house."
that house.
Y'all, you know what, family? Y'all be coming through because sometimes we have to laugh. I'm telling you, if we don't laugh, we will cry. We will go crazy. All right.
Yep.
We know
Yep.
Tammy ain't really coming for your house, but don't play no games. You want to pay
Hey,
reparations? Hey, I need gas money.
I took my ancestry.com. I'm 1% Native American.
Oh, go
So
ahead. Go ahead. Look at you. Look at you. That's why you got good hair.
it's like, yeah, good hair.
Let me stop.
Come
Oh,
on.
you
All right, we
guys.
gotta move on. We gotta
Okay,
move
we gotta
on.
go. Okay, so the next thing. Oh, and I can't pull it up. But yeah. Oh, okay. So PragerU and cousin Kevin. Yeah, they're coming for you, Kevin. So PragerU, apparently, it's been reported by News One, has teamed up with Florida and DeSantis, and is helping with their curriculum. And so I'm going to put the link in the chat, and you guys can check it out after the stream. But we did want to share some just some comments on this whole thing, since I don't know why I can't play it, but this Florida and PragerU curriculum shows this illustrated what's his name now? I can't think of his name. Frederick Douglass. This illustrated Frederick Douglass talking to people, young people in 2023 America, about the Constitution and how the Constitution is not pro-slavery, and how the founding fathers, many of the founding fathers, were not pro-slavery, but that they believed that keeping the Union together was the most important thing, so that they could eventually work to the ending of slavery. Oh, Krista she must be yet among the living. You guys, we are sick for real. And I am glad that she is here. Krista, can you play the video for me? The video, if you scroll down a little bit, scroll down, scroll. That one right there. Yeah. We'll get that going so then people can see it.
Krista saw this live stream going south, and she was like, let me jump in and save it.
Sorry. Okay, I don't know where she went. We lost her. Okay, but I'll just explain what it is. And so Douglass continues to talk about William Lloyd Garrison and his, contention with William Lloyd Garrison. And William Lloyd Garrison was an abolitionist. But the media networks have taken Florida and DeSantis to, I don't know if this is actually playing. I don't think we can hear it, Krista. I don't think we can hear that, Krista.
Children, our founding fathers knew that slavery was evil and wrong, and they knew that it would do terrible harm to the nation. They wanted it to end, but their first priority was getting all 13 colonies to unite as one country. The southern colonies were dependent on slave labor, and they wouldn't have joined a union that had banned it.
Are you okay with that?
I'm certainly not okay with slavery, but the founding fathers made a compromise to achieve something great, the making of the United States. It was America that began the conversation to end it. But Leo is correct that big problems need to be approached very carefully. Have you kids heard of William Lloyd Garrison?
No. Nope.
He's an abolitionist like me, and he and I used to be friends, but we aren't any longer. We don't agree how to solve problems. William refuses all compromises, demands immediate change, and if he doesn't get what he wants, he likes to set things on fire.
Sounds familiar.
Sounds like you know the type.
Yeah, we've got that type in our time.
So, you're trying to work for change inside of the American system.
Precisely, Layla. Our system is wonderful, and the Constitution is a glorious liberty document. We just need to convince enough Americans to be true to it.
Okay. So that is that's a part of the curriculum. And this is Florida's social studies curriculum, and this is the Black history part of it. That's someone's phone voice. Okay, and I think, but Kim, I think in fairness, what people are saying is that that is the blackface of Frederick Douglass. That Douglass wouldn't have been a proponent of the Constitution. That they've made it out to be that Frederick Douglass, according to like this article that I was reading on News One, and the link is in the comments, that Douglass is saying, you know, basically, you can keep me in chains to preserve the Union. And that wasn't Frederick Douglass's position. He didn't, you know, he wasn't pro-slavery. But he definitely could see that the Constitution was not meant to, you know, undergird or uphold slavery. That wasn't his stand. And so Kevin sent me this really long, really long, not quote, but speech by Frederick Douglass. And it's from 1860. And he's addressing the Constitution, or he's remarking on the Constitution of the United States. Is it pro-slavery or anti-slavery? And I'm going to read a piece of what he is talking about regarding the U.S. Constitution, because now the I don't want to call it the left, but the other side, you know, who is down with DeSantis and down with this PragerU video and all of this, and they're just running, you know, Dennis Prager through the mud and PragerU through the mud for all this. They're saying that, one, you know, this is the blackface of Frederick Douglass, and Frederick Douglass is just being used to prop up whiteness and all of that. But it's like, do you really understand your history? Do you understand who Frederick Douglass was and why he is different? He was different as an abolitionist, and what his thoughts were about the Constitution. And so in regards to the law, he says, now, when it is proposed to transform persons into property and men into beasts of burden, I demand that the law that completes such a purpose shall be expressed with irresistible clearness. The thing must not be left to inference, but must be done in plain English. I know how this view of the subject is treated by the class represented at the City Hall. They are in the habit of treating the Negro as an exception to general rules. When their own liberty is in question, they will avail themselves of all rules of law which protect and defend their freedom. But when the Black man's rights are in question, they concede everything, admit everything for slavery, and put liberty to the proof. They reserve the common law usage and presume the Negro a slave unless he can prove himself free. I, on the other hand, presume him free unless he is proved to be otherwise. Let us look at the objects for which the Constitution was framed and adopted and see if slavery is one of them. Here are its own objects as set forth by itself. Then he quotes, "We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution of the United States of America. The objects here set forth are 6 in number: union, defense, welfare, tranquility, justice, and liberty. These are all good objects, and slavery, so far from being among them, is a foe to them all. But it has been said that Negroes are not included within the benefits sought under this declaration. This is said by the slaveholders in America. It is said by the City Hall orator, but it is not said by the Constitution itself. Its language is we the people, not we the white people, not even we the citizens, not we the privileged class, not we the high, not we the low, but we the people, not we the horses, sheep, swine, and wheelbarrows, but we the people, we the human inhabitants. And if Negroes are people, they are included in the benefits for which the Constitution of America was ordained and established." And he goes on to continue to defend to defend the Constitution, and that the Constitution is truly set up for the freedom of people. And yes, there was a difference between, and there still is a difference between the Constitution and the government. And while the Constitution may be the map to get to a place, the government might be the people who are steering the ship. And while they might steer wrong, the map is not wrong. And so while people are damning and demeaning and going crazy about what is being taught in Florida, we have to ask, what is the true history? We can't jump on the bandwagon because we might not like the way something is said, or because and Kevin, we talk about this in our upcoming episode of Off Code. We cannot pretend that history isn't what history is, good or bad. And to use to say that Frederick Douglass is being used as blackface isn't true, but we have to know the history, otherwise we're going to get swept up in a lie. That's a lot. Go ahead, Kevin, what you want to say?
No, I was just saying that I posted the link in Facebook in the chat.
Oh, to the
article, to what you were reading, to Frederick Douglass, not even Frederick Douglass's speech. Because when we both first watched the PragerU video, we were both like, "Oh, this is bad."
Mm-hmm.
We were both like, "This is bad." And I was like, "But wait a minute, let me do some homework. Let me see," because I knew what he was saying was true about the founding fathers and how they viewed slavery and they compromised with the South and all this kind of stuff. But my original response was they shouldn't have had Frederick Douglass say it. Like,
yeah, mm-hmm.
It should have been, maybe one of the founding fathers kind of talking about their views and how they made a compromise, and maybe it wasn't the best thing, but at the time we did, that's what I was thinking. That's what let me really look up Frederick Douglass and see, is this something that he felt and believed? And when I read that very, 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 very long speech,
it is very long.
Man, he had a very, very high view of the Constitution. And he did not believe that it was pro-slavery. He believed that people were misusing it to justify for their own benefit. But the Constitution never mentions it and does not give them that right or call Black people property. That was his whole argument.
Yes.
He's like, if they wanted slavery to be a part of it, they would have put it in there, but it's not there, and you can't make it be there. You're like, it's not there. And so, and I do think the absence of it being in the Constitution says a lot about the founding fathers, because they could have put it in there and they chose not to. And there are a lot of quotes about their feelings on slavery. And it was, some say it was the worst thing. It was an evil system. It's the worst thing. They really wanted to go away. The problem is the way we learn history today, we learn it as if it's black and white, pun intended. And not understanding the complexities of history and how people of that day really did wrestle with some of these things and what was best, and the lesser two evils, I guess you can say, or and yeah, they compromised. They said, for the sake of the Union, we will compromise and not mention slavery. We're also not going to put it in the law, right? And they did the same thing after Reconstruction, right? They promised all of these things, but the minute they came to, okay, let's mend ties with the South and bring them back into the Union, they they reneged on all their promises to the slaves. The keeping the Union together was always the biggest priority.
Yes.
I mean, even the Civil War was originally about keeping the Union together, not abolishing slavery. It eventually became about that. But the whole point at first was just keeping the Union together. Like, we're not going to let them succeed from the Union, And so I get that. Was it the right thing or the wrong thing? I don't know. But at the same time, that was the way they viewed it, And I think it's important to teach history that way, and just instead of just teaching that they were evil, white, black hating racists and slave owners. Like, that's not a true accurate depiction either, you know.
Mhm.
And so once I read this speech from Frederick Douglass, even though the PragerU video still makes me cringe just because how I was kind of raised and the way I was
I
taught to view things.
I think okay, the PragerU video makes me wonder if they propped him up there because he was Black.
Yeah. I mean, I think that
Is
has something to do with it. And it's also the fact that it's Frederick Douglass. It gives credibility,
Yeah.
right?
But I mean, there are other people who give credibility too, but I'm just wondering if the thought was that we have to have a Black person to lean in to give this kind of credibility. I don't know. I'm just
they could have. I mean, it is different if you have a white person kind of giving the founding fathers the benefit of the doubt, I guess you could call it. It is. It hits different, right?
That's true.
And it also just shows a lot of the Black voices that we learned about throughout history were not the only voices. Or like Frederick Douglass, we only hear about his 4th of July statement and speech. And we don't get a complete picture of who these people were or what the opinions of Black people in general were. We're typically given the narrative and views of a particular people to paint as the views of Black people of that day. And the truth is, Black people were not a monolith, even if we come across as one today. Because I keep wanting to say we're not one, but then I hear people talk and vote, and I'm like, okay, I can't keep saying that. But in that day, they were definitely not a monolith. Even on this issue of like abolition, right? What's the best way to go about it? Frederick Douglass was definitely more so on the let's make them. Oh, I mean, it happened in the civil rights movement as well, right? Dr. King also used the Constitution, America's founding principles, and called on America to live up to those principles.
Yes.
But then you had the other side. But then you had the other side that was like, no, this is complete garbage and it needs to go away, right? So that those different viewpoints have always been there throughout history. And I think Frederick Douglass, whether people like it or not, was not on the more radical side of abolition or anti-Americanism or anti-white. He just wasn't on that extreme. He was against certain forces. He was against certain laws. He was against slavery. He was against people that were trying to prop it up. But he did not believe, as the 1619 Project would make us think, that America, founding documents and everything is inherently racist. This is a man born into slavery in the 1800s and saying, no, it's not,
Yeah.
Now go ahead.
No, I was going to say, with the 1619 Project would put the total different spin on it, which would say that they left out the conversation of slavery because they were so, enamored isn't the right way, but they were so pro-slavery that they wanted to make sure that they could protect it and not necessarily bring it out into the open.
That would make no sense.
Douglas
that would make no sense. In the 1700s, they would need to keep it secret. Like, no, they could have just, so the fact that they left it out of the Constitution says a whole lot, and then we talk about the 3/5 compromise and all of those things. It was a real battle back and forth on how to handle slavery.
It is. It was. It definitely was. And what I think we miss I'm going to harp on this for a long time. What I think we miss is that we have this conversation about slavery in a Black and white vacuum, and we leave out other slave owners. We leave out the Native American slave owners, and we leave out Black slave owners, which goes to show that slavery wasn't just about race. It wasn't just about skin color. Slavery was an economic system as well. And when you could climb out of your position of not being able to own a slave to a position where you could own a slave, you might own a slave.
Yeah.
And yes, there were blacks who would buy their relatives, and then in the census and things like that, those bought relatives could be seen as being owned. But there were also, aside from them, a group of blacks who owned slaves. Like, they was just slaves. And there were, Native Americans who owned slaves as well. And so I think the conversation of slavery overall it's not had well. And we're missing a lot of components to it. In regards to the DeSantis situation in Florida and the PragerU situation, one, I do want to say I am not like some Prager, proponent. I'm not a Prager apologist. I'm not here to support PragerU. Because I don't agree with him on everything that he says or everything that their organization says. But in regards to Frederick Douglass's position in this small clip, now they might have Frederick Douglass saying other things in other clips that weren't revealed. I only saw this one clip. But in regards to this clip, this does seem like it would be in accordance with Douglass's own words based on his 1960 speech that he gave regarding the United States Constitution. So, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to say, so my biggest thing, whether it's scripture, whether it's history, my biggest thing is what is true, right?
Yes.
It is true. Not how something makes me feel, not how it aligns with my already, biases or beliefs, but what is true. And a lot of things in history. So I see a lot of things, Black people post, we didn't get taught this in history. And it's always something, negative towards white people and, like the number of massacres that occurred, right? Stuff like that. But I also didn't get taught that African tribes sold other Africans into slavery. That's not what I, growing up, you just thought that white people went and stole slaves from Africa and brought them over, right? Like there's no complete picture. I didn't get told there were black slave owners. There are a lot of things in history that we're not taught, right? In K through 12 school. But the general narratives of things can be better, right? And that is my issue. The general narrative that is taught. And you don't have to teach every single detail, but at least give me an accurate historical picture of what happened, right? And I don't know. I just think that my initial reaction to this PragerU video showed that I had some ignorance that I needed to check, because my first thought was, they messed up and they used Frederick Douglass for some propaganda.
Yep.
Because we've only really largely heard one side of Frederick Douglass, and is that what is the 4th of July to the Negro, right?
I used to call it the 4th of July. Father, reveal my sin.
Yeah, it seems like they did more homework. And when they made this curriculum, the same thing with the whole controversy over did y'all talk about that? The Florida curriculum on a family meeting?
We talking about the Florida curriculum in the next off code.
Okay, I knew it was talked about. Yeah, we sure did.
We just recorded that video.
I know, but it ain't come out yet. Yeah, so I won't go into it because we have to rehash it and set it up, the backstory and all that kind of stuff. But people are fighting over historical narratives. And a lot of times we're reacting based on how something makes us feel and not whether it's true and accurate or not, right? And so that is where I sit. And so, truth and accuracy is kind of where I sit on that.
Lisa has a good comment. She says, yeah, but the problem with the Douglass video is how it was spun. I think his words were used in a way that didn't reflect what he really believed about the U.S. I don't know. It's hard. I mean, based on his speech, it's it's hard. Now, Douglass wasn't saying, send me back to slavery for the sake of the Union. And I think that's how people are spinning it. Like he would have surely just signed himself back up for 20 more years of slavery. But when we look at his thoughts on the Constitution and his firm stand that the Constitution is actually a freedom tool as opposed to being a tool for enslavement, I don't know that. Yeah, that it's really very far from what he believed. And you guys, with that, I can't believe we are already out of time. How is it 5:01? There's so many comments, you guys. Let's see.
I know we said a lot, and this whole video was off code.
I know,
it really
right?
was.
Let's see. Sarah's comment, I'm just going to read the end of it. A black man, let me do the whole thing. DeSantis is working so hard to turn the Titanic of education around in Florida. All his efforts to purge the actual critical social theories from the curricula. This collaboration with PragerU, I'm sure, is part of that effort. Interestingly, I think that the video couldn't win with either black or white. A black man is being used as a prop, but a white statesman from the time would be completely discredited. What's the right way to speak the truth? I think that's an awesome question. And this is the difference between, I think, those in Christ and those in the culture, because people in Christ should be proponents of the truth. Now, that doesn't mean that we just, serve people up truth any kind of way, like, well, here's the truth, just take it. But we should, as believers, be wanting to seek out truth and wanting to understand what is true, what really happened, what is history, what is the evidence behind a matter. I don't think culture is ever going to want that. Culture is always going to want that which tickles their fancy, that which makes them feel good, that which is on their side and supports their narrative. And so I think the question of what is the right way to speak the truth is, if we look at it biblically, it is to be quick to listen and slow to speak. It is that we would approach matters with compassion and with kindness and with grace, and yet not offering someone a lie. And so it's somewhere in that mix of, I'm going to offer this to you in grace, in confidence, in kindness and compassion, but I'm still going to offer you the truth of the matter. But clearly people still will hate that. People will not like the truth. And we get that scripturally, that people will prefer the lie over the truth. And with that, you guys,
yeah,
I think it is time for us to go. We will be back next Thursday. Please pray for me and Krista for sure. We are sick and under the weather. Krista just put up a comment that, let's see if I can find it. Yes, they used Frederick Douglass to give it more credibility, which I understand. Had they used a founding father, i.e. a white man, people would say, of course, that founding father is going to believe and say something like that. Honestly, PragerU and DeSantis are, if they do, and so PragerU is danged if they do and danged if they don't. That video was.
And I want to say, I do agree with Lisa that while that video is true of what Douglass has said, that video is also not a holistic picture of Douglass's view or who he was. And I don't think that's the intent for that small little clip, but there's definitely a other side to how he felt about America and some of the things that were going on.
Yeah. Like the 4th of July statement. So.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Okay, guys. With that, we are out. Thank you so much. Pray for us. Sign up for our weekly newsletter. You can do that at centerforbiblicalunity.com, and we will see you next week. Bye.